Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to explain how to check if our unit tests cover the entire prompt. Okay, so here I have the prompt and the hint, and we'll go over this in a second. And I have the code the model generated. I paste in the code here, and I click the generate test button. It gave me some tests, and we see the test pass, but we don't have full coverage here. Okay, we do not have full coverage. So how do we check our prompt to make sure we have enough tests to reach this full coverage? Okay. What I like to do, I like to bring everything into my local environment here. I have the solution and the solution.py. Let me clear my terminal real quick. I have the test cases and the test.py. And then I have this README file, just so I could just bring in the prompt and just go through this line by line here. Now, I like to go through the prompt and basically create a list here. I'll call like, unit test expected and just write what should be expected from our test here. So, right, let's go through this line by line. I'm designing a utility function to form the backbone of a large system for scientific computations. Your task is to create a Python class of arithmetic operations with a method sum two numbers that perform the basic yet vital operations of summing two numbers, right? Again, we got some background here. Kind of the structure of the app here, totally fine. Now we're going to get into what can be tested here. The method must handle integers, floating point numbers, and edge cases like adding zero, combining positive and negative numbers, or working with very large or very small numbers. All right. So this section here, there's a lot to unpack. So it should handle integers, handle floating point numbers, handle adding zero, combining positive, I can't spell, positive and negative numbers. Um, Adding very large and very small values here. Boom. So in that one sentence, I already have 5 tests here. Now, the class should also validate inputs, raising a value error for non-numeric entries here, right? That's this section. So now what should happen? We should have another unit test to validate the inputs, and specifically should be a value error according to the prompt. All right, next section. Additionally, extend the class with the matrix arithmetic subclass, where sum two numbers can process individual numbers, apply addition row-wise or column-wise across matrices. So here, I have a couple things going on here. So now we should be able to um, sum the elements, sum matrices individually, then sum matrices via row-wise, via their row, and some matrices via their column, right? So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So far, we already have 9 unit tests here. Okay. We have 9 unit tests being handled. To achieve this, include a method that accepts a matrix as an input, calculate their sums along a specified axis, row, or column, and return the results in a user-friendly format. Ensure type hints and Pythonic best practice and user throughout, right? So here again, we have, was it 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, we have 9 tests here. So that means our test cases should have a minimum of 9 tests written, a minimum. Now look at through these hints here, right? That this attempt to create a Python class or operations with a method sum two numbers that takes two numeric inputs, validates them, and returns their sum. Right, kind of just like reiterating this section here. Extend their class for matrix operations, arithmetic to handle summing rows of columns in a matrix, allowing for axis-specific operations. Again, kind of summarizing this section here. And now ensure robust input validation, handling edge cases like zero, large numbers, and empty matrices. All right. So this is a new one that the attempter added here, right? Empty matrices. Now there should be a validation Um, matrices validation, and it should also be able to handle empty matrices, right? So now there are now minimum 10 test cases that should be handled here. Now, I have this actually on my other monitor here. So let me bring this over. All the test cases that I have here. Boom. And right, so I have my simple case of int for regular integers, zeros, positive and negative numbers, large negative numbers, float numbers, right? That's handled in this test, which takes care of all of this here. Then I have my validate inputs, right? Not so we have string, none, a list, and it should return a value error, right? That's this test here. Then I have my matrix sums, right? Element wise, column wise, row wise. That's handling this section here. That's all this. And lastly, I have my edge cases for empty matrix. So when both are empty, when the matrix has empty rows, that's being handled here. Okay. So I run this in my local environment. I'll get 14 tests pass. Now let's see what happens when I run this back into the platform here. Paste that in here. Run this test. Okay, so we see here now, all the tests pass, again, 100% pass rate, but we still don't have 100% coverage. Now, why is that? Yes, we have, oh, wrong thing. Yes, we have answered um everything explicitly said in the prompt here. But now there are some things to also keep in mind, right? So let's look at the code real quick here. Um, if you look at the matrix arithmetic, the axes are not like, hey, when they pass in a row or pass in a column, it's actually an integer, right? Um, and we kind of see this value error here, right? Where it's like, hey, it must be either none, zero, or one, where zero is row wise and one is column wise. So there is this validation that's being handled. Even though it wasn't explicitly said here, there is validation being handled in this class here. And this should be tested. So I also have this written here, which is this test here. Let me bring this over. Right, so is this test of um validation, oops, validation for invalid axis. So we see we're trying to add the matrices with an axis of 2, which shouldn't be allowed here, right? Now, another thing to keep in mind here, another thing to point out is that with matrices, then again, what is the length of these matrices, right? And that's something, even though not explicitly said, it's really easy for a user to add in a matrix that has a list of 5, but this one has a list of like 2, for example, right? Like adding that will not be possible in this case. So what we could do is also do a test for that, right? Um, and I'll just say consistent uh matrix lengths, matrix length. And I'm gonna add this test. I have this test on my side as well. Which is where is it? This one. And paste that in here. Boom. So we have one for invalid axes and now for different dimensions. Run this on my local environment. Everything passed was good, so the code was written properly. But now let's bring this into the platform. All right, so now with the addition of those tests now, we see that we are now getting 100% test coverage. So it's important to note that our tests won't always just be what's explicitly said in the prompt, but it will also be things that are also handled, oops, that are going to be pre-handled in this code here. All right. We had the validation of the length of the matrix here, right? It must have the same dimension. We have the validation of the row rise, right? So even though it wasn't explicitly said in the prompt, it was handled in the code, and this test must be done. Hope this makes sense, guys. Have a great rest of your day.